All right, let's dive into a story that is just incredibly ancient and powerful. It's this amazing tale about sacrifice, quiet guidance, and a kind of joy so deep it can literally light up the darkest night. It's a lesson that is echoed through thousands of years. So, our story starts not with a hero, but in a world that's just completely plunged into chaos. It's an age of decay, they called the five turbidities. And we're not just talking about a tough time. This is an era where the very foundations of life are completely falling apart.
I mean, just look at this. The source paints a really desperate picture, a time when the whole fabric of society was just tearing at the seams. Imagine a world where the rains just stop coming, the crops all fail, and people are so desperate they actually start turning on each other. That was the reality.
And out of all this suffering, the people cry out to their leader. You can just feel the desperation in these words, right? This wasn't just a request for a little help. It was a plea for survival. They saw him as their last hope in a totally hopeless world.
And this leader? Well, he responded with an act of compassion so absolute, it's almost unbelievable. He didn't just listen to their cries. He acted in the most radical way you can possibly imagine.
And what's wild is how the king's generosity just keeps escalating. It starts with what you might expect. He opens the treasuries, gives out gold, food, medicine. But then it just blows past material wealth to a complete surrender of power, right up to the final ultimate gift of himself. Yeah, this went so far beyond just giving away stuff. This was an act of complete and total self-sacrifice. The king literally declared that every single part of him, inside and out, was available to his people if it would just ease their pain. I mean, that's a level of compassion that's hard to even comprehend. Okay, and this is where things get really interesting. This epic tale, it's actually a story within a story. It's a teaching tool being used for a much deeper lesson. So let's kind of pull back the frame and see who's really telling this tale. So, here we are. We're about to meet the real narrator. And the setting isn't some grand kingdom anymore, but the quiet of the night. You see, the story of the king isn't just some old legend. It's actually a living memory, and it's being shared by a celestial being, the night goddess. And she's teaching this young seeker, Sudhana, who's out traveling the world, trying to learn the path to true wisdom. The goddess explains her own work, her own way of helping. And unlike the king's huge public acts, her help is quiet. It's subtle. She's like a guardian of the night, guiding souls who are lost, not just in the literal darkness, but in the metaphorical darkness of despair and confusion. And this contrast, right, between the king and the goddess, it brilliantly illustrates the core teaching of the whole story, that compassion, this drive to help other people, can take so many different forms, and each one is powerful in its own unique way. See, both the king and the goddess are walking what's called the path of the Bodhisattva. It's a huge idea in this tradition. The whole point isn't about achieving enlightenment for yourself, but doing it for the sake of everyone else. It's a path that is defined by selfless action. The goddess uses her story to show these two powerful ways of helping. The king's way, well, that was like a roaring bonfire in the middle of the day. Impossible to miss, right? It transformed an entire world. But her way is more like a quiet lamp in the darkness, offering just enough light for one lost traveler to find their way home. And the lesson is, both are absolutely essential. But here comes the most stunning part of her lesson. This is the big reveal, who the characters in her story really were. And this is where the past and the present just kind of collapse into one single, breathtaking moment. So get this, the legendary hero of the story, this king who sacrificed everything, turns out that was the Buddha himself in a previous life. This was just one of the countless lifetimes he spent learning what true compassion really means on his long journey to enlightenment. And what happened to all those suffering people he saved? Well, his incredible act of generosity had this massive cosmic ripple effect. It was like he planted the seeds of enlightenment in every single one of them, seeds that have now blossomed into the wise and compassionate beings that populate the heavens today. And here's the final amazing link. The goddess reveals that she was right there in that crowd as a young woman. Her own path to becoming a divine protector, it began in the exact moment she witnessed the king's compassion. It just goes to show how one good act can inspire another, echoing across millennia. This whole revelation, this connection, that's the source of the goddess's power, and it's the final takeaway for the young pilgrim Sudhana, and really for us too. Now, this isn't some kind of abstract magical force. Her power comes from this really deep understanding, this joy she feels from seeing how a single, selfless action can create a light that just never, ever fades. A light that continues to guide and inspire others forever.
And this just reveals the profound truth of her lesson, doesn't it? Compassion isn't a single act that just ends. It's an endless chain of inspiration. The king's compassion inspired the goddess, and now her story is inspiring Sudhana. That is the difficult, beautiful wisdom she's sharing with him.
And so it leaves us with this final thought to chew on. This story reminds us that acts of compassion, both the huge, public ones and the small, quiet ones, are happening all around us, all the time. And often, they're unseen. They are the steady lamps in the night, lighting the way for all of us.